Hello, Amber here, and welcome to my tutorial for the Sweet Little Scarfette. This is a cute little scarf that is knit from tip in the round and then to tip. It's increased in the first section. Once we get to the number of stitches required, then it's just worked as a tube on either circular needles or DPNs or double pointed needles, depending on your preferred way to work in the round. Then at the other end, once a desired length is reached, stitches are decreased for the point and bound off. The small circumference can be a bit fiddly at first to get used to, and I have had a few people ask me about how to go about it. So this is a quick little tutorial focusing on that part of the pattern, showing casting on a few stitches and then working on either circular needles or double pointed needles to knit your little scarfette. And double pointed needles or circular, either is fine depending on your preference. Mine is circular, but I know some people prefer to work with the DPNs. And essentially you work it just across two needles, keeping it relatively flat, working across one set of stitches and then across the other. So you'll just need 3 DPNs if you're working with DPNs. You can skip to whichever technique you prefer or watch it all. It's a pretty short video, and get started with your sweet little scarfette. To begin, you'll need your materials. You'll need either circular needles or DPNs or double pointed needles, your preferred way of working in the round, and yarn and stitch markers. The start of this project starts really small and it's quite fiddly, so it'll take a little bit to get the hang of, and you may find that you cast on a couple of times and give it a couple of goes just to get it sorted if this is your first time. But it's worth persevering. Once you get going, it cruises along and it's quite a simple project. I'll start with the circular needles and I'll also demonstrate with the DPNs. And start by casting on the 4 stitches. I'm using a long tail cast on. You can use whatever your preferred cast on is. Cast on the 4 stitches. And there'll be a lot of pulling with the magic loop, pulling the needles around and shuffling to make this work across the 2 needles. Ultimately, there'll be half the stitches on one needle and half on the other, and I'll be working across half of the stitches at a time. So I'll begin by spreading these out across the 2 needles. I'll work the first 2 stitches and then the second 2 stitches. Working knit front back for the first one and again for the second one. And I'll just pop those out of the way. So I've worked across those, and I'll bring the needle around so that the stitches just worked now on the bottom. The working yarn is coming from that bottom needle, and I'll pull this needle through now to work across the top stitches. And do the same, knit front back twice. And I'm going to bring that row, I'm going to bring that needle just worked from the top to the bottom. And this is the continual process of, once that's on the bottom, we've got the working yarn, I'm going to pull that needle through to work across those top stitches. So we've worked one row, we've worked knit front back into all of the stitches, increased to 8 stitches. And now we're going to join to work in the round. So we're going to keep working around in the round direction. And place a marker for the beginning of the round. I find a removable marker best for this because the little round ones will just slide off as you're working around. And so it's good to be able to move the marker up as you go along as well to keep track. So we have half the stitches on here and half the stitches here, and we're going to work a plain knit round for this first round. Get into the 4 stitches. Turn that around so the top needle is at the bottom, the working yarn is coming from the bottom needle. Push those top stitches through onto the needle and pull the bottom stitches out, or the bottom needle out, so that you can work across those top stitches. So we've knit across half, we're going to knit across the other half back to the start of the round. I'm working it fairly firmly so that it's got a nice even tension. There'll be a little bit of a gap here. Just keep it as tight as you can. So turn the work around again. Push that top needle through and pull the bottom one out to work the next row or round. We've worked the cast on, the increase round and a plain round, and now we're going to work another increase round. So this increase round, we're going to increase 4 stitches. We'll knit front back into the first stitch, knit 2 and knit front back into that last stitch on this top needle. And then turn the work and repeat for the second half of the stitches. Push that through. The working yarn coming from the bottom, working across the second half of the stitches. Knit front back. Knit to the last stitch on that needle. And now we have 4 stitches increased, and we're back at the start of the round. So this is going to form the point of our tube, and it's going to keep growing, increase to the width required, and then work the project even. So you might find it helpful just to move that removable marker to keep track of where you're at. So this is the beginning of the round marker, and going to work an even round now. No increases in this even round. So a bit fiddly to begin, but it will soon grow and be much easier to manage. I've worked quite a few more increases now, and you can see that tube really forming. I pulled that tail from the cast on through the bottom so I can weave in that end later. And I'll continue to work in the round and have this grow. I've made some progress now and have worked the initial increases and working in the round, and you can see the tube that's forming, starting from this little cast on of 4 stitches. It's my preferred technique to use a cable needle to work in the round. I have got these deep ends They're my only DPNs, so they're not quite the right size specified in the pattern, but it's close enough, and I'll be able to demonstrate the same thing on the DPNs. But please bear with me. I don't normally use DPNs, so I am a little bit awkward with them. I hope this will help though. If your preference is DPNs and you haven't worked the small circumference in the round, hopefully this will help you get started. So I cast on, as with the cable needles, 4 stitches using my preferred cast on, which I'm using a long tail cast on here. 4 stitches onto one of the 3 needles. I just use 3 DPNs for this project because I'll be working half the stitches across one needle, half across the other, and then using the 3rd needle to knit off. And the first instruction is to knit an increase into each stitch, knit front and back into each stitch, and spread the stitches out so that half are on one needle and half are on a second needle. So I do that by working the first 2 of the 4 stitches, knit front back into the first one, knit front back into the second one. And now I'm going to work the next 2 on the 3rd needle so that we can separate the stitches across the 2 sets of needles. So here, knit front, back, and again, the total of 4 stitches increased. Magic loop is by far my preferred method of working in the round. I thought I'd show on the DPNs as well for this video though, as I have had a few people ask about how to get this scarf started. I'll show both ways. So we'll begin the same way, casting the 4 stitches onto one needle. And essentially what we'll be doing is there'll be stitches on one needle, stitches on the other, so half on each. And then this 3rd needle will be used to work across the stitches. The first row is that increase row, and also the spreading out of the stitches across the 2 needles. So knit front back 1 stitch, knit front back the 2nd stitch. Turn the work so that the stitches just worked are now on the bottom with that yarn coming from the bottom, and slide that needle so the stitches are up at the tip of that needle. I've worked all 4 stitches, increased them to 8 stitches, and now I'm going to knit around and join this yarn up to this edge of the project to work in the round. This is where you would use place and marker for the beginning of the round, which at the start, there's not many stitches, it's a little bit hard to see, but as the project progresses, you'll just move the marker along so that you're sure that you know when the beginning of the round is. So I've got my marker here. I'm going to work the first round using that 3rd needle, knit into the stitches across the top, and give a reasonable tug to pull that yarn tight to keep it secure in the round so that there's no gap there. And knit across those 4 stitches. Turn the needles again, slide that top needle so the stitches are at the end. And again, now the yarn will be at the bottom. I will knit across the top 4 stitches, and that will finish that round. Again, it's just a little bit fiddly at first. Once you get more stitches on the needles, it will become a lot quicker and easier. It's just this first part where it's quite a small circumference. Again, turn the work, push that top needle across, and we are at the start of the round. We could move that stitch marker up to keep an indication of that, and we've got the working yarn coming from the bottom here. And this round is an increase round, so we will knit front back into the first stitch, knit 2, and then increase into the last stitch on the top needle. And again, we're going to turn the work. Careful not to twist. You want it to be this way. Push the top needle down, and you've got the working yarn at the bottom needle here, and repeat for the second half of the row across the second half of the stitches. Knit front back, knit 2, knit front back, turn the work again, bringing that to the bottom and sliding that top needle across. And you'll continue on like this. Eventually, you'll increase to the width and then continue to work in the round, working in that same way. It'll become, as I say, easier and clearer once you've got more stitches on the needles. So here we are at the start of a round. It's probably a good time to bring that beginning of round marker up and work across. We're just going to knit for this round, no increases. So work across those stitches. A little bit fiddly. Probably didn't need quite as big a beginning of the round marker, but there we go. So knit across those stitches, bring the needles around again. Using that spare third needle, we're going to knit the remaining, what is now 6 stitches for the second half of the stitches. Turn the work. And at some point, you may like to pull the little cast on tail through to the right side and have that dangling down, ready to weave in later, and also just keeps it a bit out of the way of the knitting. And you'll start to see that shape forming. And that's it, a tutorial to get started with a small circumference in the round knitting. Once we get past that little part, it'll be quite straightforward. It's just getting into that initial rhythm, which may take practice. You may need to cast on and have a little practice for a couple of rows before you feel the tension is where you want it to be. And then carry on merrily knitting your Sweet Little Scarfette.